All right, what is up, my brothers from another mother? I want to thank you for being a Patreon and supporting the work I do on this channel. Today's topic will be exclusive to Patreons only, may be released later on the channel as a piece of paid content. I'm just going to switch over to my notes. This has been requested quite a few times, as you can tell by the title. Basically, the question is, how do you safely navigate having children in today's world? Let me preface again by opening that I'm a guy that's just speaking from a lot of experience throughout my own life, my own red pill awakening, and a lot of the men that I coach. I know a lot of you guys rely on the sort of stuff that I talk about. So I want you to take it with a grain of salt, but also understand that, again, most of the stuff that I'm going through here comes from a place of experience or sharing those experiences of the guys that I've coached. So a lot of guys are looking towards, how do I have kids? How do I navigate the, this crazy world that we live in? It's gynocentric. It's centered towards women. Feminism's come a long way. And they see the risks involved with having kids, and they go, Rich, well, how do you do it? So I don't have a magic wand that I can whip out and wave and say, hey, let's just wave this and make everything easy for you guys to have kids safely and not ever get taken to the cleaners or things ever go sideways, or in the worst case scenario, they go very badly and you want to commit suicide. In opening, I can safely say that you just simply can't. It's a risky proposition. It's a high risk proposition for men. It's low risk, high safety for women. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you in this video how you can potentially navigate this path to minimize and lower the risk as much as possible. So there'll be a lot of red pills that I'm going to drop here that will hopefully open your eyes to some of these facts. We've got a lot of variables. One of the things that you've got to understand immediately right away is that women will always reserve the right to change their mind at any given time. Women can change their demeanor, their interest in you for a whole number of reasons, which I'm going to get into. But just as a basic soundbite, I just kind of want to open by saying that. The other risk that you face as a guy is women always reserve the right to work less than you do. There's been a lot of guys that I've coached now and spoken to. This wasn't my direct experience, but a lot of men that I've spoken to that have expressed that when they met, she was working whatever job, making $100,000 a year. And then because of her biological imperative to have kids or to want to settle down and get married, whether or not kids came into the picture or not, quite a few of them have reduced their working hours. They've taken a position of basically living off the marriage, living off the man. So it's something that you need to be aware of, and I'm going to show you how to kind of filter through that as we go through some of the points here. Again, I need to point to the obvious fact that 1 in 2 marriages are going to end in divorce, and family law does not work for you, gentlemen. If you have the boy parts in your pants, family law is not going to help you whatsoever. That was one of my big awakenings in my life, is coming to the realization that there's really nothing in family law that's designed to benefit the children, first of all, and second of all, men's survival. It's about the reallocation of resources to women. So it's super important that you spend at least some effort on vetting women better if it's something that you want to do. If settling down and have kids is important to you and you want to reproduce, I understand there's a few points we're going to talk about here. But you do have to pay a lot of attention to what you're getting into, because I've said this again in my videos. If you're a regular subscriber and you watch my stuff, there's nothing that can ruin a man's life quicker, faster, and to a greater degree than partnering up with the wrong woman and reproducing with her. So I want to talk about kids for a little bit. You got to understand that they're a lot of work. They're a shitload of work. They're more work than you can possibly imagine. They eat, sleep, stress. They eat, sleep, walk, stress, they shit stress. Everything that the kids do, they're gonna drain your energy. Children are energy vampires. And I don't mean that in a disparaging or a derogatory way. They are going to drain energy from you. It is their nature. They need nurture. And it is a requirement of being a parent to allocate your energy and your resources to the child. So if you're a selfish person, you've got to understand that having kids may not be in your best interest. It may not be the best idea for you. So consider that they're not something you want to bring into the world for your own benefit. Second thing I'd mention to you in this area, my notes, is you want to ask yourself several times over, why do you want to have kids? Not just a couple times. Ask yourself that 5 times, 10 times. What is it that you want out of having children? And make sure that you're clear on it. Make sure that it's something that resonates within you. Make sure that your intuition, which comes from your heart and your gut, listens to it and speaks to you, and listen to that voice. So That's one of the other things that I like to do often with guys when I'm coaching them is ask yourself the same question over and over again. Why do you want to start up this business? Why do you want to marry this person? Why do you want to have kids? Ask yourself that question many times over. And sometimes you'll find after a while, hey, maybe it's not something I actually wanted. Maybe it's just, societal norms pushing things on me, which is one of the big problems that men tend to suffer is they plug into this blue pill thinking of, just do what everybody's told me to do. Settle down, have kids, 2.1 kids, a station wagon, the white picket fence, and blah, blah, blah. And you don't necessarily need to subscribe to that notion. It may not be right for you. So that's why I'm encouraging you, ask yourself that question several times. I want to talk about costs because it's been stated that kids will cost you about $250,000 each. So cool $250,000 to raise from the time they're born to the time that they leave your domicile and start supporting themselves. Now, I don't think that they're as expensive as what these projections are. My daughter's 8. If I were to estimate, I would say the monthly cost to me raising her is going to be less than $500 a month. Because at $250,000 for about 20 years, that's roughly $1,100 a month. So I know that as kids get older, then the requirements get greater. They're going to look for things that cost more money, more expensive clothing, more expensive education. Of course, if you're going to send them to university or college, if you're the kind of person that's going to buy them a car, things like that, get a little more braces if you got to fix their teeth, things like that, orthodontics. So as they get older, I'm sure the costs increase, but my experience to date so far from 0 to 8 is roughly about $500 a month. Now, there's people that spoil the crap out of their kids and spend far too much money on them, in my opinion, just throwing all kinds of nonsense at them. You don't need to subscribe to that. In fact, that's one of the things that I should mention right now. If you're thinking of settling down with a woman and having kids, and she's the type that likes to blow money on dumb shit, bad sign. That's somebody that you want to avoid. I'll just mention that now before I get into the other points that I've mentioned here. Don't have kids for selfish reasons. So if you're thinking to yourself, I don't want to be a lonely old man because I want to have kids or grandkids around me, that's a selfish reason. That's not the reason why you're going to have kids. You've got to find something beyond, like a greater why, a greater purpose as to why you want to reproduce. Just marinate on that for a little bit because there is a fairly good demographic of people that I've come across that are like, well, do you want to be a lonely old man? Do you want to be a lonely old woman? I'm not a woman. I don't really care. But from my perspective as a guy, what I've seen is most people die by themselves without their kids by their side. Sometimes they are by their side or might have visited. But there's a lot of men out there that are old men without their children around. They just grow apart or they take on new interests or they move across the country. Things happen like that. So having kids to avoid being lonely is dumb. Get a dog, or a pet or something like that. Other thing I would recommend on the early points of just thinking about children is spend time around a lot of kids, around family and friends. And I'm not talking about a few hours hanging out for a barbecue or going to a pool party. I'm talking about, take a week's vacation with some family members that have kids and see what kids are like to be around on a full-time basis. You'll get a pretty good idea of whether or not you're the kind of person that likes being around children, likes their behavior, can start to spot bad behavior, watch how parents deal with children. I mean, just do it. As you're navigating the world, you go to the grocery store and you see parents with their kids in the grocery store, watch how they behave, watch how kids are. I think I was about 35 when I had my daughter. So for the better part of my life, I didn't spend a lot of time around people that had kids for prolonged periods of time. I didn't have a great grasp. I had a pretty good grasp, but I'm encouraging you to at least consider that, to spend time around people that have kids. Best would be family. Next closest would be friends. If you can spend a weekend at their cottage, if they have children, or lake house with them and their kids and watch how they behave, you'll get a pretty good sense of what you're going to be up against. You'll also see what it's like being around the children's mother and how those two, interact on a longer term basis too, not just for a couple hours where they behave, but where they start to snap on each other. The other thing I want to mention is you can't program what kind of kid you're going to get. You can get all kinds of spectrums of issues, which I'm going to talk about in a later paragraph here, but I just want to mention that very briefly. So just a few sound bites so that you kind of get your mind thinking and start marinating on the idea of children and what's required and what your obligations are. Somebody asked me in the comments when I was soliciting some feedback on the Patreon and the private Facebook group, if you could talk about timeline, so what the right age is to have kids. If you're a guy, I'd encourage you to look under the age of 35, for sure, because after the age of 35, you can start running into problems, which I'll mention in a minute. But between 30 to 35 would be a good place to start. In your 20s, I'd focus on 20s just on yourself, working on yourself, building your life, building your business, whatever it is that you're doing, building your career, not dating on an exclusive long-term basis, perhaps spinning plates or short-term dating strategies. But for guys, I'd say the best starting point from my experience and from the guys that I've talked to is between 30 to 35. For women, it's probably around 20 to 30. Women are most fertile and in a better place to reproduce and provide a healthy, useful child to society, if I can put it that way, because they're the ones carrying them for 9 months. So their bodies are more apt, more prone to do the best job in their 20s. The problem with that is most women in their 20s are really not looking for kids. They're focusing on other things in their life, which we're not going to talk about in this video. Now, one of the pros that I want to talk about, having kids a little later in life, a study from the Proceedings of National Academy of Sciences found that fathers who waited until later in life to have children pass on DNA with longer telomeres. I don't know what a telomere is, but it's defined as basically healthier DNA, which will promote slower aging and ward off illnesses later on in life. So there's somewhat of an advantage if you're 30, 35 plus. Into 40s, guys can father children at that age. It's not recommended because there are cons, which I think probably outweigh the pros. And the cons are, according to some other studies, specifically Mount Sinai School of Medicine, you have 1.5 times greater risk of having a child with autism in your 30s, past 35, and the chance increases 5-fold in your 40s. Meanwhile, the chance for schizophrenia doubles when you're 40 and triples at 50. As you near 40, increased risks also include bipolarity, epilepsy, prostate cancer, breast cancer, so forms of cancer, obviously. And a 2005 study at the University of California, Los Angeles, found that babies born to men 50 and older, those wives who are at least 35, by the way, are 4 times more likely to have a child with Down syndrome. That's some shit you don't really want to put up for the rest of your life. When you have the vision of having a kid, you want to play with little Bobby or Jimmy in the dirt and mud and ride bicycles and shoot bows and arrows and mountain bike and ski and stuff like that. You're not thinking about wipe and drool. It's a harsh thing to say, but let's be honest here. Let's point to some cold, hard facts. And if if your concept is I love girls, you want to be able to do things with your little girl. You want to be able to have those daddy-daughter sort of dates and things, and have tea with them. Play games with them. Again, you don't want to be spending your time wiping drool and caring for the child for the rest of your life. So consider those things. Again, this video is not some magic wand that I'm going to wave to fix all of your problems and answer them. They're sound bites, they're red pills. They're going to help you open your eyes and hopefully make better decisions if this is something that you want to do and somewhere where you want to go. Somebody else mentioned in the Patreon page in the private posting about vasectomies. So if you don't want to have kids, get your nuts snipped. That would be my best piece of advice. Don't get a vasectomy if you're unsure, or you might want to have kids in the future, because it's not always returnable successfully. And if you have to use things like IVF, it can be expensive, and it's not always successful as well. I mean, I have a friend that spent well over $30,000 to have one child through in vitro fertilization. The other thing you also want to remember is it's called birth control, guys, because you need to control the birth. It's one of Rollo Tomasi's iron rules is you control the birth. Don't rely on her taking birth control pills, having a IUD. There's something like 20 to 30 different methods of birth control for women. It's a function of feminism and the gynocentric society to allow women to make those choices. And there's like 2 choices for men. Maybe 3. Wearing a condom, being a really good puller-outer, or getting a vasectomy. There's no birth control for men, as far as taking hormone pills or anything like that. So just understand, until you're ready, until you've made the full and final decision, you need to be in control of the birth. Okay? Let's talk about hardwiring for men. Just checking my timer here. Men need to understand that their biological imperative is to scatter seeds. We've been designed for millions of years to reproduce with as many viable females as possible. Read the book Sex at Dawn by Chris Ryan and Casilda Jeta. It's an amazing book. It'll explain to you the biological imperatives and the differences between men and women. Women have a totally different game. Again, I'm generally speaking to guys in this because it's guys that are asking me, how do I navigate this safely in today's Western world without getting screwed? Just understand what you are as a guy and what your biological imperative is as a guy. There's not a day that goes by. I mean, I get emails from people all the time and they're asking me blah, 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 all this sort of stuff. And they're like, I've got a great girl. She's a 10 out of 10, but I still want to bang other chicks. Just understand what your biological imperative is and whether or not you surrender to it, whether you're spinning plates and you're seeing multiple women, or you're the kind that is okay with being monogamous and exclusive, because this will be something that will come into your life. You know, married guys are high value men to single women. They do tend to prey on them from time to time. And that's why you see these home wreckers, you know, come out of the weeds. So just understand that concept. Men have a need to reproduce with as many women as possible, especially if he considers himself superior stock. They've studied DNA of society, and it's obvious that about 20% of men are banging 80% of women. So that's 2 to 3 times more, like that's 2 or 3 women for every guy that they're reproducing with. Most men are not reproducing. So DNA, you know, our genetic lineage throughout history comes from about 20% of men roughly. And the women that are reproducing with this small pool of men, these high desirability alpha, you know, sort of characters, are anywhere from 60 to 80% of the population that are reproducing with them. So that's just a cold hard pill, like a red pill truth, so to speak, that you need to understand. Men are banging multiple women and reproducing with multiple women. That's just how it's always been throughout society. I'm not going to get into elements of monogamy and this, that, and the other thing. You can get that from Chris Ryan's Sex at Dawn. What I want to focus on is how guys can navigate safely when it comes to reproducing with women in this book, or sorry, not in this book, in this particular premium piece of content. Women's hardwiring, their frame is slightly different. They're going to seek out the highest value male that she can attract and lock down. So that's hypergamy. We've talked about that on the regular videos on my channel. If a woman is a 5 out of 10, if she can get a 10 out of 10 and lock him down, she will do it. Women will always seek the highest value, highest status man that they can lock down. It's as simple as that. So just understand that concept. Briffault's law dictates that the female determines the conditions of the animal family, not the male. So if you think for a minute that you're going to decide the conditions of your family with reproduction, having kids, and direction, for the most part throughout history, it's been females. Not to say that an alpha male who's firstborn can settle down with a beta type of female that's lastborn, has a strong virtuous father, older brothers, that sort of thing, like an ideal sort of dynamic. And she might allow him to drive, you know, whatever, the train or the boat or whatever. But for the most part, Briffault's law is going to dictate that it's a female that determines the conditions of the animal family. Now, where it gets interesting is when the female species finds no value in the male, there is no guarantee of her continuing the relationship with him. I can't tell you how many divorced women I've spoken to. Why did you get divorced? And their answer is, well, I got bored. Or he kept quitting his job, you know, because people at work were bees mean to him. I had this one woman that I was in an LTR with for a longer period of time, and she ditched her husband. Nice guy, you know, just he wouldn't hold down a job. And women don't have the patience for that kind of shit. Even though they had children together and they were pretty young when she left him, she fell out of love, got bored of him because he couldn't keep his shit together. She wasn't bringing home the bacon. She had to, you know, top things up and modify her lifestyle, and wasn't getting the life that she was expecting to lead because he kept quitting his job. So when the female species finds no value in the male, there's no guarantee of her continuing the relationship with him. You need to understand that. That is Briffault's law. That really is not going to change much. There's no such thing as relationship equity. I've spoken about these concepts in my video from time to time. So relationship equity is when a guy comes along and says, well, I did this and I bought the curtains and I moved to the town that she wanted and I created a in-law suite so her mother could live in the basement and blah, blah, blah. And they think that they can make withdrawals on those deposits that they make into their wives, their girlfriend, you know, their children's mother, whatever it is, you know, road that you're going down. But the reality is there's no such thing as relationship equity. It basically ties into Briffault's law. You're only as useful to her, and you're only going to be around in her life so long as she finds use in you. So, you know, being able to do all these things and pile up this long list of shit that you've done for her, and then make a withdrawal later and say, well, it's time for, anal night Wednesday, sweetheart, sort of thing. No such thing as relationship equity that you can make withdrawals on. You're always giving. You're always going to give more to her than what you're going to get out of it. She'll also want to be the primary caregiver, is something that I should mention as far as women's hard wiring if things don't work out, which I'll get into in this section here under single motherhood. So one of the other risks that you need to consider is the programming that women have been led to believe, the sort of stuff that they subscribe to, hook, line, and sinker. So women, by way of biology, feminism, and the state family law, think that they own the rights to the children. This is something that I woke up to going through divorce, coaching a lot of guys on divorce, is women will want to take ownership of the children, especially if they're small. They'll make up all kinds of stories about the guy being useless, unable to provide, having a bad temper, being a bad father, bad provider, whatever the blanks are, you can fill them in. They're going to make up whatever narrative that will support their biological imperative, the feminism pills that they've been taking all their lives, how state can help women, take care of themselves by providing child tax benefits and all sorts of things. Here in Canada, it's not uncommon to see women with a couple of kids getting, $1,000, $2,000 a month, depending on what their income is, from the government to top up their income as child tax benefits. So women don't need men. They know full well that the state, the government will help them out. And men are just an accessory that they probably don't need, that they can drop at any given time. So you have to understand that that is a Western mentality. It's not the mentality of all women. I'm not suggesting all women are going to go down that road, but on a balance of probabilities, women in general behave in the fashion where it's like they carry the child for 9 months, they birth it, they think it's theirs. And generally speaking, the younger the child is, the more ownership they're going to want to take on that child. And it's not just for raising and nurturing, it's a control play and it's a money play, because when they have primary caregiving of that child, should they choose to end the relationship with you, they can do some pretty nasty shit. Money, a lot of money can flow to them, leaving guys fairly destitute. And at the end of the day, it can get pretty bad. So you have to understand the mentality that Western women come from. And I'm going to show you some of the signals to look for in a moment, but let me just finish these major points over here. Let's talk about single mommies and how they ruin kids. The vast majority of incarcerated, gang-related activity, runaways, teenage pregnancies, learning disabilities, doing poorly in school after they leave into the world on their own, in general, come from single mommy households. These same women that I just mentioned earlier, by way of biology, feminism, and the state and family law, think that because they birth a child, they own the rights to them. They're like, the biggest threat to society is single mommyhood, in my opinion. So you just got to be aware that that is a programming default for most Western women. Women are brainwashed to believe that they can do it all, and they end up feminizing children. There's always comments in my videos whenever I talk about something related to this subject from guys that will stand up and say, hey, I was raised by a single mother and my life is screwed now because of this. Things that I believed are not connected to the reality of the world. There was a guy at the 21 convention that stood up and spoke very freely about being raised by a single mother, doing feminist rallies and attending feminist groups by women that were so large they couldn't even get out of chairs, with purple hair and face piercings and all kinds of stuff. You just got to understand that they make incredibly bad choices. So I'm gonna go through how to vet women better. A lot of this actually comes from this book here, The Tactical Guide to Women by Sean Smith. You should get it if this is something that you're considering for the future for yourself, safely navigating having children in today's Western world. But here are the main points that I want to dive down here. You want to vet women better. So you want to avoid the following. First category is going to be social media whores. So women that seek attention on places like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, whatever it is. If they're one of these women that have a mobile device that is full of pictures, of selfies, they're taking themselves and posting online, seeking the attention and validation from mostly men and also women, you want to avoid those. Those are high drama, low value women. Narcissists, also high drama, low value women. So what's a narcissist? These are women that think that they're the best, they're the center of the universe. The worst narcissists are like the 3s and 4s out of 10s that think that they deserve a 10 out of 10. You know, they bring nothing to the table but a quickie cut haircutting degree that makes them $22,000 a year. And when you see them on dating sites, they're looking for the six sixes. You must be at least 6 foot tall. 6 foot tall. You must make a 6-figure income. You must be out of a relationship for at least 6 months. You must have 6-pack abs. And she's some fat feminist blimp that's making 20 grand a year that brings nothing to the table. Watch out for these narcissistic 4s that think that they deserve 10s. Single mothers intent on being single mothers. I've said this before, or I've hinted at it, I think. I think that the biggest narcissists in the world are single mothers. You know, the ones that selfishly reproduce without including the father in the child's life are doing a great disservice to the child. It is huge. So pay attention and stay away from single mothers. In fact, I would completely discourage you from settling down and reproducing in today's Western world with single mommies. They've already demonstrated the inability to make good choices. I'd recommend staying away from them. Another point under narcissism is they rarely appear guilty nor apologize for their wrongdoings in life. They don't take ownership for their shit. It's everybody else's fault but their own. So this is a category of women. Actually, I think Sean talks about it a lot in this book. But this is a category of women that I strongly suggest that you just completely avoid. Any signs or signals of these elements here, bounce. It's not worth your while. The juice will not be worth the squeeze. Unstables. They need to be the center of attention. They need excessive caring, regularly play the victim or princess card. Relationship is a roller coaster ride of highs and lows. Difficult to relax around the person. They can fluctuate between love and hate quickly. They invade your privacy. They break into your, email, your Facebook, whatever. They go through your personal belongings looking for, suspicious acts of indiscretions or whatever it might be. Unstables are fucking energy vampires. The other thing that you have to remember, guys, is any type of these women that you're going to choose to reproduce with, chances are, 50-50 chance, that elements or traits of that are going to end up in your child or children as well. So you want to be intentional, not walk around blindfolded or just sleepwalking through life. You want to be intentional if this is something you want to do about the type of woman that you want to settle down with. By the way, all of these notes I'll put in the description of the video if there's enough room for me to put it. I might have to distill them a little bit more, but you can go through them afterwards as well. So second point, unstables. Third one, we've got paranoids. Paranoids are unduly suspicious. So it kind of ties into the unstables. The paranoids are the ones that are going to invade your privacy, accuse you of cheating on them. It's usually, women that accuse you of indiscretions that you're not performing on. They tend to be doing it themselves, and they're just trying to validate their own behavior, these types of paranoids. So watch out for suspicious behavior, violating your privacy, stalking you, try to control you and who you hang out with and who you're allowed to spend time with and what you're allowed to do. A wound collector. So they hold grudges for a very long time. These wounds that they keep carrying around forever and ever, they don't work on their own shit. They have a lack of ownership. Failings at work, life, relationship, it's never their fault, okay? Psychopaths and predators. Next category. They take advantage of people. They're parasites. Hypergamous chicks, again, they're making $20,000 a year and they want to marry a guy that makes a cool $250,000. Like, give me a frickin' break. What do you bring to the table except for a basic haircutting degree at the quickie cuts? And I'm making a $250,000. Stay away from these predatory type of women, okay, these psychopaths. They have a mean, evil side as well. It often doesn't show right away. In fact, one of the things Sean and I talked about, I think off camera when we were doing the interview, is you want to be able to vet women better by watching their behavior over a longer period of time. A lot of times people say, well, you'll know within 6 months or 3 months. Not true. These sorts of behaviors can come out anywhere from, I think it was 12 to 18 months he recommended. So you want to watch the behavior over a longer period of time to look for consistent patterns. They put others at risk financially, physical, or criminally without any concern whatsoever. We're talking about psychopaths and predators still. They lie to get what they want. So look out for pathological liars. They've got a hot and cold personality that goes from charming to seductive, to hate sort of thing. They're arrogant. They might think that they're a legend in their own mind, these psychopaths. So those are the main categories. The other ones that I also noted as well, stay away from feminists, these social justice warriors. If they want you to go and march with the pink pussy hats down at Parliament buildings, ignore them, okay? I shouldn't have to go down the path of talking about staying away from feminists and social justice warriors. Don't waste your fucking time. They're not going to produce great kids. They're not going to produce a great relationship with you. They're just a complete drain on your energy. The other thing that I want to mention, again, I've mentioned this before in a few other videos, is apply reverse hypergamy, meaning don't marry down. Very important. You make 100 grand a year, find somebody that makes around what you make or more. You know, maybe like 80, 90 grand will be like the bare minimum. So let's say 80% of what you make. So if you make 100 grand and she makes 80 grand, you know, make sure you're marrying somebody that makes at least pretty close to what you make or more. The reason for that, if things don't work out, you're not going to have to deal with maintaining her lifestyle. You know, I've said this before. You meet the girl at the quickie haircutting place, she joins your lifestyle where you're living, things don't work out, hard break. You can be responsible for maintaining that lifestyle even though she was here when she met you. Okay, super important. Do not marry down. Marry somebody if you're going to settle down and have children in today's crazy Western world. You've got to apply reverse hypergamy to the equation as well. Again, as I start going through all of these, and I'm about halfway through right now, I'm trying to do this in about 40 minutes, you're going to start to see that it's going to be very, very difficult. This is going to be like a full-time job for you, okay? So reverse hypergamy, you're going to need a prenup. Make sure you get that, even if she makes at the same level or less as you. You want to get a prenuptial agreement that's going to govern the relationship. You know, if you're going to be dumb and marry the $20,000 a year quickie haircutter when you're making $250,000, $100,000, you know, something like that, you definitely need a prenup. 100%, it's a non-fucking negotiable, and you need to renew the prenup every few years. You're going to have to talk to a family lawyer. Oh, next point. Get a consultation from a family lawyer in your area. Family law varies from state to state in different parts of the Western world. Talk to a family lawyer for an hour. Give them an hour's fee to find out what family law says about, you know, those types of relationships you're going to get into, whether you're going to get married, whether you're going to be common law, whether you're not going to get married, but you choose to have kids with her. Whatever that relationship is, consult with a family lawyer. Also, do not leave the relationship if it is not working out until you plan for it properly. Consult with a family lawyer again at that point. That's the sort of coaching that I do on the Clarity platform where I'm most effective, is helping guys navigate through these types of arrangements where they want to have access to their kids and they don't want to get divorce raped by their partner, wife, girlfriend, whatever it is. Make sure you plan for it. Be intentional. Also, last but not least in this area of notes I've got, avoid bad genetic stock. Guys, you know, I've talked to guys a few times and it's like there's a family history of whatever, you know, obesity, diabetes, whatever the hell it is. Why would you want to reproduce with shitty genetic stock? It's as simple as that. Women don't do it. I see guys do it all the time, but women are very intentional, that, you know, which is why 80% of the women are fucking 20% of the guys, is because they're only reproducing with the top genetic stock. So don't waste your time with low value women. Low value, high drama, bad genetic stock. Pay attention to that. Take a look at their family history and see what goes on in their family. If there's a lot of you know, bad genetic mutations, whatever it is that you want to call, avoid it. You know, you can avoid it by simply not putting your penis in there and reproducing with it. It's as simple as that, right? More notes here. Oh, other ways of vetting women. Look through their social feeds, social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. They will tell on themselves there. They may not necessarily tell you what their intentions are or what their value system is, but for some reason, you know, women like to, you know, they share these memes. And, you know, let's use feminism as an example. If on social media they're telling you that they're not a feminist, hey Rich, I love you, and you know, you're a great guy, and I love your alpha status, and blah blah blah, and I'm not a feminist, and you know, I think patriarchy is great, and you know, they kind of fill in the blanks. But then you look at their social feed and they're sharing memes about feminism and pink pussy hats and, you know, go Hillary sort of thing. Watch that, because I've said this before again, watch what women do and less of what they tell you, less of what they say. So pay attention to signs and signals there. Recon the parents, especially the mother. She's going to become somewhat of a version of her mother. So do some recon on the parents. If her mother is a controlling, manipulative, high drama piece of garbage, I guarantee you she may be on her best behavior right now, and elements of that will start, you know, filtering into your life. So Be attentive to what the parental units in her family are like and what they represent. Let me give you a good example. It wasn't that, well, it was a while ago, actually. It was about 12 or 15 years ago. I was dating this chick. It was Christmas. We went to her place, or parents' place around Christmas. I don't know if it was the day of or Boxing Day. And her mother was this, how can I put it? She was one of these women that just like browbeat the crap out of her husband. She definitely wore the pants in the family, and she told him what to do. And she decided the new place that they moved into needed some rock in the backyard moved on fucking Christmas. My view on that is, are you freaking kidding me? You know, she's going to force the guy to leave a family event when people are visiting, hanging out. We're going to have dinner, have a meal, have some drinks, watch something sort of thing. And she wants him to go outside and move fucking rocks around. Guys, look for signs and signals of that sort of, crazy behavior from the parental units, especially the mother. Elements of that will filter into her life. She's going to behave in the same way. You know, the programming that we have as adults comes from our upbringing, from our childhood. So you can expect what happens in that family or in that relationship to come into yours. Be attentive. Other thing I should mention is regarding these personality disorders like narcissism, unstables, paranoids, psychopaths, predators. They are chameleons. They're highly predatory. They tend to focus on locking down high-value men. So if you're a top 1 or 2% guy in your field, you're world-class at what you do, you're very alpha, you get shit done, and you have women. These high drama, low value women will tend to prey on you, and they're manipulative as fuck. The only way that you can confirm that she's a stable woman is watching her behavior, again, for about 12 to 18 months of dating. She'll start to reveal any of these elements if they're present. She can't hide them for that long. It's just not possible. But just be aware that women with personality disorders, if you're a high value guy, if things seem too good to be true, if things just seem that great, and your intuition knows, your spidey senses know, guys, you got to listen to it. It's a radar. It's a protective mechanism there to help you survive and live a better world and a better life. So just pay attention to their behavior over the 12 to 18 months. Let's talk about commitment to raise kids properly as well. Having kids is a minimum of an 18 to 20 year commitment on you and your partner. So if you're seeing signs and signals that this person that you're looking to reproduce with in today's Western world is not somebody that you want to live with for about 20 years, you're heading into trouble. Don't think for a minute that it's a good idea to reproduce and then let things break up after 4 or 5 years of being together and having a kid or two, and then that's it. The best way for a child to be raised is in a core value system. Of course, 2 parents, very similar values that are committed to raising that child or those children together. The next best thing is having parents that realize that their marriage didn't work out and they're doing it separately in 2 separate homes with a very similar value system that are going to raise that child and offer it great values. That doesn't happen that often. Through the acrimony of bad divorces and selfish women and feminism and so on and so forth, most women try to take control of the children and raising them, and that's what fucks things up pretty bad. So just be aware of it. It's a long-term commitment. What else can we talk about? I'm going to leave in the description below. I'm not going to read this because I want to keep this under about 40 minutes, but I'm going to leave in the description a letter from a father before he committed suicide to let you know how bad shit can get. Family law is not in your favor. I know most guys don't understand how bad it is. It's only people that have gone through it that really understand how badly family law treats men in divorces. And it's really a terribly sad letter. The guy basically says, I love my daughter and my son to death. Family law did this to me. My wife behaved this way. And that's the end of it. So I'll leave that in the description. You can read that. Scroll down. I'm going to talk about alternatives and wrap up. What alternatives are there to having kids in today's crazy ass Western world where we have to go through all of these steps to properly vet and, pick the right person sort of thing. Surrogacy is an option. Okay. Women will do it for a fee. I've heard it's anywhere from $30,000 to $60,000 to have a woman be a surrogate for your child. But the problem that I see with that is if you're going to do that, you're going to be a single dad. And while statistically speaking, and there's not a lot of stats on it because throughout history, especially for the last 50 years, through the function of feminism and single mommyhood, it's mostly women that have been raising children, not men. But statistically speaking, men do a far better job at raising children than women do. So if you're hell bent on it and you want to go surrogacy route, that's an option. I don't recommend it for the sole purpose of, I think that kids need both masculine and feminine energy in their lives growing up. And again, I've said this before, there's nothing like the ideal formula is having a man and a woman raise the children together in a household, and it thrives, but it's so hard to do. As I've gone through with all the points here, there's a lot of stuff that you have to do to properly vet and navigate the slippery slopes, but surrogacy is an option. I wouldn't recommend it. I think, the best option is just finding the ideal partner and, crossing your fingers and doing the work and hoping that it works out, that she doesn't, act on her right to change her mind at any given time and get bored and start banging the pool guy. I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, if you're the absolute best version of yourself, you're a top shelf guy, you're alpha, you bring home the bacon, you make money, you're strong, you're virtuous, you take care of yourself, you don't get fat, same thing with your partner. She does the exact same thing. Your chances of having a good long-term relationship are pretty good. One of my best friends, who's been married for 23, 24 years, has a great, relationship with his wife, but they work on older school values, I suppose. They work on patriarchal values. She's not a feminist. He's an alpha, and she's willing to let him be the man. So by going through a lot of these, vetting processes and really kind of sniffing out what you're getting into and understanding it, it's a lot of work. I'm not going to lie to you. It's going to be a lot of work. It's going to be hard. So make sure that it's worthwhile. Also, if things aren't ever working out in that relationship, if you've done the, 12 to 18 months of vetting to make sure that she's a good fit, then you have kids or a kid and they're not working out, be intentional about the breakup as well. You'll need to plan it. Again, talk to a family lawyer, talk to somebody that coaches people on divorce, the kind of stuff that I do. And, minimize the damage, the fallout on the outcome that way. I hope this video, this 40-odd minute video, this educational premium piece of content shed some more light on the concepts of navigating safely in today's Western world to have kids. I'm sorry there is no magic wand that we can wave. Go make yourself a time machine and go back a few hundred years or a few thousand years, and that would be the ideal environment to do it in, if I'm being honest with you, because you've got a lot that you've got to navigate with in today's world. The good news is information flows a lot more freely. Stuff like you being able to watch this 40-minute video about what to expect, the pros and cons of having kids, when you're going to have kids earlier, later on in life, men's hardwiring, women's hardwiring, their frame, single motherhood, what that's all about, and how to vet women properly. At least you can get into it with your eyes wide open. My intention is to provide these useful, cold, hard truth bombs, these red pills, so that you yourself can go through and navigate the slippery slopes of the Western world today. Thanks for watching today's video. I appreciate you guys for supporting my work by watching this premium piece of content. I'm not sure if you can leave a comment below because I have to put it as an unlisted video when I upload it to Patreons. But if you can, leave me a comment below. I know you can do that on the Patreon page. So let me know what you think of this. And if you have a video topic suggestion for next month's piece of premium content, I'm going to be releasing one of these per month for Patreons only. They may be released at a later date as paid, like a paid per view type of content, because I know you can do that on YouTube. And I may even at some point, kind of distill it down and do like a trailer for those that should become Patreons. Again, thanks for watching today's video. Have an amazing one. Peace out.